Hello and welcome everybody to the From the Heart Christmas special. And where last year seemed like such a layup as we are already going through the Hellraiser franchise, it was so very obvious that we'd be going through the Hellraiser Christmas special, something that I had a ton of fun with, and something I was actually able to kind of stretch across the whole month to really wrap in the Christmas cheer. And I gotta be honest with you guys, it was a little bit hard this year to actually find what I wanted to do, something that would nail the Christmas spirit. And this ensue with a bunch of bad planning and a busy work life and things like that, it's just been a little bit tough. But I wanted to make sure to actually put on a video that would encapsulate this year's spirit, and I really do think I found something that'll do just that. And it'll actually be the first time that I've actually covered this subject on the channel, so I could not be more excited. And the reason why I bring this to the table is because when I was a little kid, around 5 to about 8 years old, every single year for Christmas, my father would go out and get me just about every single Spawn action figure that there was. And while I didn't totally understand who this character was, there's no doubt in my mind that the Spawn action figures are absolutely badass. I mean, look at this guy, and look at that guy, and this guy, who could even imagine? I had such an amount of these toys lined up across an entire room. Eventually, there wasn't even anywhere to put these things, but sadly, I opened every single one of them, destroyed them as a young child, and now I can only yearn for what I once had. But nonetheless, the thing I will be bringing you all today is the Spawn Christmas special, something that was mentioned in my Discord and something that I immediately went out and found. And while I have covered things like Spawn vs. Batman, I've never just exclusively covered a Spawn comic book, and this does seem like a weird place to start, as this one doesn't even really necessarily involve Spawn other than 2 or 3 different scenes. But it's his actions that would actually cause a small poor family and an entire community the joyous day of their entire lives. And it's something that honestly I find quite touching as a kid who actually, came from a broke family, who kind of struggled around these times and felt the extreme pressure of actually going out, getting everybody presents, trying to meet everybody's family members, and I really hope it's something that you all can enjoy with me. So whether this video actually comes out on Christmas or right after, I just want to wish all of you an absolutely fantastic end of your year. I want to thank all of you so much for supporting this small channel, everybody who's kind of joined the Discord and made friends with me and such, and everybody who's just stopped by over the 2 years that I've been doing this channel. It's been an incredible time, and I can't wait to see what else I can do with this thing, what other stories I can cover, but for now, let's let those sleigh bells ring, let's light our candles and get out the milk and cookies and just have ourselves a good time. Where the story will begin is in New York City, Harlem, as a small poor family gets ready for the festivities. A snowstorm engulfs the city and conceals its grimy streets. The faint sounds of Christmas music, sirens, and the odd gunshot mingle in the night air. Rows of buildings, houses, and families, some extended, some broken, and the lucky ones prepare for the evening's festivities. Snowballs, my favorite! Not too many of those, Greggy. You'll get a tummy ache. Just a couple, Kay. I won't get sick, I promise. And with their next shot, we would see the small family all wrapped around the table as the mother prepares to go out for work on Christmas Eve. And as this young boy's gleam and his joyous innocence irradiates, we would none other see his sister Nadine looking very pouty and extremely 90s, with the baggy plaid shirt along with the pants, perfectly encapsulating teen angst. And as this young man Bibbsy gets his way with eating yet another snowball, he would announce to the room that he's going to go count the presents once again, having done so for every single day for the past 2 weeks, and the mother merely just tells him to not drop any crumbs. After all, Christmas is such an exciting time of the year for any young kid. I remember being a child myself and absolutely not being able to sleep whatsoever and watching the movie Ice Age over and over along with Mouse Hunt. 2 things that I'm highly nostalgic about and 2 movies that I do think could probably still hold up to this day. But with the next panel, we would see this young Nadine throwing a bit of a hissy fit. This young and single mother who is just striving to do whatever she can for her children. Come on, Mom, it's not fair. I told you like last week that everybody's going. Like, if I don't go, I'll look like such a loser. I'm sorry, Nadine. I have to work, and you know we can't afford a babysitter. I need you to stay here with Greggy. This is so totally unfair. Nadine, please, I don't need this right now. Bibbsy boy, come give Mama a goodnight kiss. And as the tension fills this room, as his young daughter continues to badger her mother about going out, we would see young Bibbsy walking straight up with one of the most iconic smiles I've ever seen, with the snowball frosting covering his entire mouth as his mother grabs his chin and tells him that he looks a lot like Santa, telling him to make sure that he actually goes to bed tonight, as so Santa's helpers would not skip their house. And throughout this book, we will see young Bibbsy remain his constant state of Christmas joy, something that I find so incredibly wholesome, and by the end of the story, honestly, it might actually bring a little bit of a tear, because this child's innocence and the thing that he does for his entire family is a Christmas tale that has actually managed to touch my heart, unlike so many others as I get more and more older. But with our next panel, we would see this young mother walking down the night road. I hate this, leaving them alone tonight, especially Greggy. I wish waitressing could make ends meet, but I need this job too. The kids deserve a better life than I've had. Oh God, I'm gonna be late. And with this next panel, we would finally see this mother making her way to her night job, to work for some of the more privileged and the acolytes of Harlem City. Well, Phyllis, I'm glad you decided to show up. I'm not so sure that you even need this job as much as you say you do you? Oh, Mrs. White, I'm sorry. It won't happen again. The weather was just awful. And with this, the mother would be told to be quiet. And as she begins slaving away, the harassment would never end, with this older, richer woman telling her just how lucky she is to have this job, that there are hundreds of people across New York City who would practically beg her for this position. And with no option in sight, money needed to actually get her kids the presents that they want, this mother would never think of quitting this job. And I gotta say, as somebody who's never really ran through the Spawn comic books, the artwork in here is really something to behold. It's very cartoonish and all at the same time very real. It's all very over-exaggerated, and these things will not slow down, especially when Spawn comes into play. Seeing his legs completely arched over in the most ridiculous stance that we've ever quite seen, the artwork in almost every Image comic book is something to beheld, especially in the 90s when almost nearly all of it had a very similar style to it. And as somebody who's actually listened to a lot of documentaries about how they actually did some of their perspective, about how some body styles shouldn't be able to bend in the ways that they do, there's actually a lot of trickery going on to make these scenes look so nice. But before we get to any of that, we will be cutting back to the apartment as Nadine begins to plan her great escape to go out to the party that we saw her mention earlier. Are you sure Brad's gonna be there? Oh my God, he's like so cool. Like that guy I just love in the Lee Jeans ads. Really? He asked if I was going. Sure I'll be there. Who wouldn't? And with our next scene, we would see Nadine putting in this Christmas VHS and telling her brother that all he has to do is press play when it's over, that her mother said that he could simply watch this over and over, as tonight is one of the most special nights of the year. And as Bibbsy gets in front of the TV, looking so overjoyed, Nadine would begin to think to herself that her mother is never truly going to let this little boy grow up. And something that I find so sad is to actually see a sibling try to crush the Christmas spirit out of their younger sibling, as this kind of innocence is something that is so rarely found in today's world, and something that is honestly very needed. Because that kind of spirit and that kind of joy is something that is truly transcendence, something that can bring a smile to just about anybody's face, whether they're having the worst time of their life. To actually see somebody so young and so excited for these things is something that would brighten anybody's day. But as Nadine begins to open the door, telling Bibbsy that she'll be back in only a few minutes, Bibbsy would know nonetheless. And as he sits there in front of the TV, we would see him watching Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. With the snow falling outside and a candle in the window, this kid is truly in Wonderland. Your bright nose will light our way this Christmas. You've saved us, Rudolph. It's time if we hurry. All over the world, boys and girls will have a Merry Christmas. Rudolph's the coolest. With his mother working almost every night, he thinks nothing of being left alone with Nadine. As for the many nights she takes off, he thinks nothing of being left alone, period. Time passes. Little Greggy finds himself lost in a dream world. It's Christmas Day, and hundreds of presents lie beneath the tree. He picks up a big, shiny red box and hands it to his mom. It's from Santa. A huge smile lights up her face, and Mommy worked so hard, and Santa knows it. Nadine's there, and so is Daddy, and everybody laughs. Mommy searches under the tree for a special gift, and now it's Gregory's turn. A funny-looking present with a huge bow on it. A new guitar. Just what he always wanted. The best Christmas ever. And with our next panel, we would see something truly special, as a bunch of footsteps could be heard from the rooftops, and young Bibbsy will begin to wake up. Feeling extremely groggy from this Christmas nap that was just had, he would call out for Nadine, mistaking the noises for something more familiar. And with the next panel, we would see his face become completely lit up, thinking that possibly Santa Claus is up on the roof, and that just maybe little Bibbsy would get his own chance to witness this man for himself. Is that you? Huh, footsteps. Lots of them. Oh, baby, yes, it's them, the little helpers. That means And with the coming panel, we would see a bunch of Harlem thugs sitting on top of the roof as a most familiar entity would fly down with the most ridiculous cape that we've ever seen in our lives. Something that would seem to move on its own. Something that would seem to have its own life. The only person that this could possibly be is Spawn himself. As we look to this giant pinup panel that says Santa is finally here. And obviously for me, this is the Santa Claus that I personally would love, to actually have one of Hell's Little Helpers come out and actually give us any kind of gift that he could mention, whether this just be daylight security or to actually clean up the streets with Batman. Spawn is a character that has really meant something to me throughout my entire life. And like I said, as a person who hasn't really binged all the Spawn series, going upwards of 300 issues at this point, I've really only read about the first 10 or 12. But nonetheless, it was something that my dad really enjoyed, and I just remember myself being a kid just kind of looking at all the artwork and appreciating what a cool ass anti-hero this man could really be. And to actually see a Christmas special featuring this man is something that I could only dream of. And for the people who brought this up in the Discord, I have to thank you guys so much because I was really struggling to actually find what I wanted to cover this year. But with the next couple of panels, the action would ensue. As we had watched little Bibsy running to the table to put out the snowballs and the cookies and the milk, and in the next panel, seeing Spawn's chains clink and clackle all together, whipping across all these different enemies and completely throwing them to the ground. And as noise ensues from the rooftops, little Bibsy would only think that this would have to be the reindeer, pulling the sled. And in the next panel, we would see Bibsy talking about how he hopes that Rudolph is out there, that Santa will surely need his big red nose, as we look to the artwork that ensues with this, and actually see one of these chains actually smashing one of these thugs in the nose as blood begins to fly out. And as Bibsy begins to put out the final plate of cookies, thinking to himself that they will be so hungry that pulling a sled of this size, of this nature with presents for across the entire world, that surely this must leave some kind of appetite. With our next panel, we would see one of these festive hoodlums being flung off the roof with a giant blood splatter ensue. And with this, Bibsy would run to his bed, hoping that Santa Claus hasn't seen him awake, as he looks out his window and sees one of these strange men outside, mistaking him for one of Santa's helpers. Pretend I'm asleep, because Santa knows which boys are naughty and nice. Hope he knows Mommy's been nice too, even Nadine, but she's naughty sometimes. Like that abominable snowman, he's always, "Oh no, I left the milk in the kitchen. The cookies will make them thirsty." And after all these different scenes of watching Spawn kick the asses of all these non-dwellers of Harlem City, we would see young Bibsy running, putting out the milk, and running back to bed. And in our next panel, we would get this amazing scene of Spawn actually taking all these criminals, wrapping them up with his chains, and using him for his own sort of sled. Flying off into the night, with his legs completely arced out, and like I said, the most ridiculous thing that you could ever even see. And a body posture that I'm not even sure is possible. At least not for our human selves. And once again, as Bibsy would look outside, he would see something that could only be mistaken for Santa, with Spawn's giant cape enveloping his entire body, and the bodies of all these enemies kind of being overcast. It would look to him like Santa's sleigh riding off into the moonlight. And with our next panel, we would see something that would almost destroy Christmas for little Bibsy. The tree! Gotta check it! See how big Mom's present is! Having counted the gifts a dozen times a day for the past week, Greggy can see at once that nothing has been disturbed. He forgot us. Maybe I can still catch him. Santa Claus! Rudolph! Come back, please, don't go! And as this young man looks out into the moonlight, he would look down at the fire escape and see something dropped by one of the criminals, and a gift from Santa, a bag with a bunch of money symbols all over it, and suddenly Christmas would be saved. And while it is very sad to say Christmas was saved by a wad of money, this is just merely what's going to happen, alright? This young boy is going to do something great, and even though he didn't purchase this gift for his mother, he immediately decides to hand it over as he knows exactly how much this will mean to her. For a woman who works 2 jobs, and a woman who would like to do nothing else than to make her children happy. And as we see him holding this giant wad of money up, we would see his eyes completely light up, knowing about the happiness that this will bring him and his family. I bet Santa had to leave this outside because he was too fat for the window. Probably didn't want to get stuck like Winnie the Pooh did. Now, I'll put it right where she can see it. I just can't wait to see Mommy's face. And Nadine's gonna have a cow when I tell her that I saw Santa and Rudolph. And with one of the sweetest shots that I think I've ever seen, and honestly, at the very beginning of this, first kind of picking this thing up and reading it, I would say the artwork was a little bit ridiculous, but the drawing and the illustration of just how happy this young boy is something truly heartfelt, as he looks down at this gift under the tree, knowing that his mother will be so completely stoked, And Bibsy will begin to think that this is so cool, that he could bring his family something so great. And with our final couple of pages, Bibsy's mom would finally come home, presents would be unwrapped, and the new shiny wad of money would be unleashed. And what's actually done with it, what Bibsy's mom actually does with this money, is something that, like I said, almost brought me a tear, alright? I think it's something so totally sweet, and while this is a Spawn comic book that doesn't even really feature Spawn necessarily, I thought it was so cool to actually make a Christmas story centered around the actions of Spawn not only kicking ass, but his actions towards the community in general. For a man who was meant to be Hell's servant, but instead doing so much for the people around him, it's something truly heartfelt and something that I'm so glad to be covering here on this channel with you all. The next morning, when Phyllis opens her unexpected final present, she sees her son beaming with pride. Then, as she and Nadine stare in shock at its contents, Gregory tells them of the late night visit. He radiates innocence and sincerity for the rest of the day. Phyllis wrestles with her consciousness, but finally, she comes to terms with her dilemma. Within 2 days, all the money is spent on the other poor families in her building. A wonderful dinner, toys for every child. It's a party none will soon forget. Bibsby, yes mama, I'm so proud of you. You do know that, don't you? To Phyllis, the greatest neighbor and friend a person could ever hope for. I want you to do me a favor. Please, remember this. Remember today, all the joy in this room is because of you and Santa. You see, what you've done is give me a chance to remind us all of what's important in this life. Our families, our friends. Please, never ever forget those who care for you. Always find time to be with them, and never ever desert them in a time of need. That's how you show you care, how people know you love them. I'll remember. But mommy. Yes, Greggy. Isn't this the best Christmas ever? Yes. Yes, it is, son. And with these final pages of actually seeing Spawn sitting down in the alleyway, enveloped in his giant cape and pretty much turned into a giant throne and staring down at the picture of his family, this would be the end of our story. Something that I found so heartfelt and something that I'm so glad I came across and got a chance to read. And while it is very short and like I said, something that is Spawn, but that doesn't necessarily cover Spawn whatsoever, it's a story that I think truly has a lot of heart. Something that could have been very underwhelming, but something that ended up paying off quite big, at least for me. And I hope it's a story that you all can appreciate for yourselves as well. And once again, I just want to thank you all so much for supporting this channel. I know it's incredibly small, but the people that I've come to meet throughout here, and the people that I've been talking to, and all you nice people have left me so many comments through my 2 years of service on this thing. And it's something that I'm so thankful to actually have in my life. And even though I don't break in thousands and thousands of views, that's not really the point of this. This is something that I truly enjoy, and to actually have you people come in here and also kind of boost my attitude towards it, to actually make me pumped up and excited for these special holiday videos. It's something that I couldn't be more thankful of. But yes, everybody, talk to me down in the comments. Let me know what exactly you thought about this thing. Do you think it's kind of lame? Do you think it's a little bit underwhelming for a Spawn comic book? And do you think I should go on to cover some more Spawn comics? I believe I have the first 50 issues. I'll bind it up in some weird 90s collector's editions that I found a very long time ago. And I would be more than happy to probably cover a few more of those. But for now, what you can expect after this video is we will be getting into Silent Hill. Alright, I'd love to cover a few of these comic books as they're pretty different from the games. They have a pretty different vibe, and while they are creepy, they're just not quite as creepy as the games, but they do kind of lend themselves a different kind of attitude, I might say. We'll have to wait till we actually get into that so I can kind of explain all this to you guys, but nonetheless, everybody, have yourself an amazing Christmas, join the Discord, come talk to me, and have an absolutely fantastic day. And thank you all so much for stopping in once again. And I'll see you on the next episode of From the Heart. See everybody later.